Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Robin, or A Hobbit's Reading List, and today we are going to figure out what my TBR for August is going to be. So I'm proud to say that for July I read many books. The only book I didn't get to on my July TBR was Hidden Huntress, and it is currently the 29th of July, and so I may very well start it, just depending on when I finish the Pot Hunters. I am filming this under the assumption that I'm going to finish Pot Hunters by P.G. Wodehouse, because Dad and I are recording the podcast Monday, so I need to have it read by then. And I'm also counting Schmutz as part of my July TBR and having finished it, because I will have listened to over half of it. I'm being very transparent because my dad thinks that that's not true to the game, but I made up the game. So I am saying that I only didn't read one book, which means that I don't get a reward, but I also don't get a consequence this month. So that means that I am just gonna play, not worry about, how many books I have. I've shown that I can read 12 books in a month, so let's just play. Let's have all the roll-agains. Let's have all the extra books. If this is your first time watching my TBR game, I play on a Trivial Pursuit board, which is the Lord of the Rings version, because I love Tolkien. And each color represents a different genre that is one of the 6 most read genres in my collection, which are, and I'm going to try to do this without forgetting any of them: romance, fantasy, Jewish, LGBT, psychology, oh, I knew I would forget one. Oh no. Fantasy, romance, Jewish, LGBT. Oh, classics. It was just like, there's one more. And then at the end of each spoke is a bigger box, and this is the miscellaneous category. So for every time I land on a headquarter space, that is an opportunity for me to read a book outside of the 6 most popular that I read. So I'm going to head and get set up, and then we're going to figure out what my prompts are and how many books I'm going to read this month. Okay, so the first roll is always nice because I get to just essentially just pick what direction I want to go in. So 6, which will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna get a miscellaneous book then. So I'll just go blue because all of them are 6 away. And miscellaneous is actually the first card. So it's my most recent purchase, which I know what book this is. So for the first book, it was pretty easy because it was my most recent purchase, which is The Badass Librarians of Timbuktu by Joshua Hammer. This is a nonfiction book about an archivist who traveled across the Sahara Desert to get his hands on these, ancient Islamic and secular texts to preserve them and preserve history, and how Al-Qaeda kind of got in the way of that, and the story of the lengths that they went to preserve this history that they found. So I thought it was really interesting, and considering my ultimate goal is to become a librarian with the hopes of becoming an archivist, I thought it was really cool to see a book about it, so I'm excited. 3, 1, 2, 3. Green is Jewish. 1, 2, 3, which is fantasy and fantasy. So Jewish or fantasy? I'm gonna go with fantasy. which is a booktuber recommendation, which is perfect because I have a prompt that definitely fits this. For fantasy, that is a booktuber rec. This actually fit really well with the family book club book that I have for August, because it was my dad's turn, and my dad has a YouTube channel where he talks about books, so he's a booktuber, and his channel will be linked in the description. But the book that he recommended for the book club, and then recommended again for me for my TBR game, is Horns by Joe Hill. I don't know a ton about it. I know that it was made into a movie with Daniel Radcliffe, and I know it's about this guy who wakes up and he has like devil horns on his head, following, I believe, the assault and murder of his girlfriend. That's really all I know. I know a couple members of my family book club have read it and said it was weird, which my dad agreed with. So that'll be interesting. We'll see how that goes. Third, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then so any third one on any of the spokes, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Jewish, or fantasy again. I don't really like going backwards to the spokes, so I'm going to go ahead and go with Jewish. Okay. And is the highest rated Jewish book that I have. Okay, a Jewish book that is the highest rated. I have a special list on Goodreads for all my Jewish books, because Storygraph doesn't have like a Jewish tag for some reason. I mean, they have like a religious, but they don't have Jewish, which is fine. So I have a special little list on Goodreads, and I sorted it. And this one, I feel like it's cheating because it only has 2 reviews, and both of them are 5 stars. So its average rating is 5 stars. But it only has 2 reviews. But it is To Be a Jew by Rabbi, I need to look at the name because I want to get it right. Rabbi Hayim Halevy Donin. I don't know anything about it. It's nonfiction, and it's a guide of how to be a Jew. I believe I probably got this for like Hanukkah during my conversion. Most likely, my family is very supportive of my Judaism, and it was published in 1972, so it might be a little outdated, but that's fine, because I enjoy reading about the different ways to be Jewish. And 2, 1, 2. So the roll again adds a book to my total. 1, 2, which is classic. I don't really feel like I want to do a classic right now. I feel like I'm getting burned out on classics. I'm going to go ahead and add a book. So that will bring my total to 8. Watch me get a classic anyway. 2, so 1, 2 is Miscellaneous, 1, 2 is Jewish. Well, let's go to Miscellaneous again. You know, it's about time I read outside of my comfort genres. Okay. Which is, Siri picks. So that'll be interesting. So Siri pick was interesting because I have 180 books on my TBR list, which is any book that I own that I have not read yet. 180 books. I asked her to pick a number between 1 and 180. She picked 126, which Storygraph doesn't number their lists, so I have to go through and count. So that was fun. I got to sort of review the all the books on my TBR. However, I was pleasantly surprised to get Daughters of Sparta by Claire Heywood. So this is about the Daughters of Sparta, who are Helen and Clytemnestra. So this is essentially a retelling of presumably the latter half of the Trojan War and what happens to Helen and Clytemnestra. And I read a book a couple months ago which was a retelling. Yes. I'm trying to remember what book it was. Was it Electra? Yeah. Yes. I read Electra a couple months ago, and that was fine. It was fine. I'm hoping that I enjoy this one more, because I do like retelling of Greek myths, because I do know them fairly well. So I think this will be really cool, and I've heard good things about it, so. The 5th book. 2. Lots of 2s, roll agains, and a classic, as predicted. Alright, let's go ahead and do it. It's a classic with an odd number of pages. Okay. Classic with an odd number of pages. I will admit this one is maybe cheating a little bit. Sorry. But I have to read a Wodehouse book like I do every month, and I don't want to read it. I already know I don't like the main character. And on Storygraph, the edition that I happen to save on my TBR is 201 pages, which is an odd number. However, I am probably going to read it on Kindle. So, sorry. So I'm reading on Kindle. It's going to be Smith in the City by P.G. Wodehouse, which is about Smith, who I first met in Mike and Smith, and I absolutely hated Smith's character. So I'm not looking forward to a book where I believe he is the main character. So, whatever way to get through it. 3. 1, 2, 3, Jewish. 1, 2, 3, fantasy. 1, 2, 3, fantasy. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I have decision fatigue, so this is actually, like, really difficult for me right now. Oh, fudge. I'm gonna go ahead and go fancy. I like yellow, so there you go. Okay, there we go. Of course, I just screwed myself over. Fantasy, which is with the highest number of pages. A fantasy, that is my biggest book. And I'm slightly regretting putting this book on the list because I have read it already. But this book is why I don't feel bad about including Smith in the City, even though technically, like, it's an odd number of pages on a technicality. There is an edition with an odd number of pages, but I don't own any of them. But it's because my fantasy book, that is the biggest book that is on my TBR list, even because I added it, even though I've already read it, is Lord of the Rings. The entire series. You might be asking, Robin, why did you do that to yourself? I don't know. It's just been quite a while since I've read the series. At least 8 years, if not a full decade. And I missed it. I know I added it probably like around December, maybe January. And I just missed it, and I was very aware that I hadn't done a reread in a while. And, you know, my YouTube is named A Hobbit's Reading List, and so I felt like I wasn't doing enough Tolkien stuff, so I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do a reread of Lord of the Rings. And now, I'm thinking I should have just added the individual books instead of this huge, huge edition. But it's too late. I did it. And this is definitely my biggest fantasy book. There was no doubt. As soon as I picked that card, I'm like, Oh, I wonder if it's gonna be Lord of the Rings. But what else would it be? Like, literally, after Lord of the Rings, which is 1,200 pages, the next closest are my two, like, bigger editions of Sandman. And they're, like, 550 pages each. So I'm like, cool. Cool, cool, cool. Six, alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Jewish. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Miscellaneous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Roll again. I'll go with Jewish, because I only have one Jewish book so far. I seem to be hovering between a couple genres. Jewish book with an odd number of pages. Okay? 4, Jewish book with the odd number of pages. I just realized I got that prompt twice here. I was nice to myself. I picked up Gates of Shabbat, which is a guide to observing Shabbat by the Central Conference of American Rabbi. This is... I didn't count the glossary as a page. Whenever I was looking for, like, number of pages, I didn't include the glossary if I had the physical edition. So, not including the glossary, this has 135 pages. I think the last 20 are songs, which is cool because I don't know a lot of songs, and the ones that I do know, I picked up just by going to temple, so it'll be nice to actually be able to, like, look at them and try to figure them out for myself. So I am actually, like, I got this in New York and I was really wanting to read it, so I'm really glad that I can, so I can figure out, like, the different ways that I personally want to observe Shabbat, because I know that a lot of the different rules that I'm aware of just don't fit into my lifestyle right now, but I can maybe try to incorporate some of them. Last roll right now, probably going to be the last roll. 3. 1, 2, 3. Of course. Ooh. A Gothic classic. I haven't seen this prompt before. This will be interesting. Okay. So for our bonus roll, we got a prompt that I didn't know what I was going to do with, because Storygraph doesn't delineate things with Gothic. So I had to go to good old Google and type in Gothic classics. And I was surprised by one of the books that came up. I understand more now why it was on the list. But there were, you know, the Frankenstein and then Dracula and Rebecca and stuff like that. But there was also Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. So according to the list I was looking at, which was like Oprah's something list, but the commentators were people who teach Gothic literature, so I trust it, even though I was like, why did Oprah have this list? Anywho, they acknowledge that, like, on the surface, yes, Northanger Abbey appears to be a Gothic novel, which is good enough for me, quite honestly. They did say that it's actually a parody of the Gothic literature that is very popular at the time that Jane Austen was writing. And so that seemed really interesting to me, and even though I did have, like, I think one other book that was on the list, I don't remember which one, but I wanted to read Northanger Abbey, especially because I've been on a Jane Austen kick for the past year and reading or trying to incorporate as many books as I can that pop up in the TBR game. So after I read Northanger Abbey, I have one more book that I own that I haven't read, which is Emma, and then the two other novels that I don't own, which are Mansfield Park and Lady Susan. And then I will be able to say, without a doubt, Pride and Prejudice is the best one. So, oh, and then, those are my TBR game books. I do have one other book I was not able to wedge in there. And it is Wonder of Wonders, A Cultural History of Fiddler on the Roof by Alisa Soloman. And this is a book that the person leading this month's book club at my temple picked. They really enjoyed it when they read it, and I'm looking forward to it. We haven't read a nonfiction book for the book club, and I enjoy Fiddler on the Roof. I've only seen it a couple times though, and so I'll be really interested to read more about the history of it. So those are my 9 books for my August TBR. I was feeling pretty good about being able to, not have that many extras, and then I got Lord of the Rings. So now I'm nervous again, because if you think about it, now I actually have 11 books to read because there's 3 in one, and I just can never be nice to myself, apparently. So that's my TBR, baby. Yeah, I'm thrilled. This is gonna be really interesting. There's a lot more nonfiction than I usually do, but it's all Jewish, so that's good. We'll see how that goes. Like the video, leave a comment, subscribe, click the notification bell if you want to get notified every time I upload a video. I do weekly reading vlogs, so you can see my real opinions in real time before I do my wrap up at the end of the month. And other than that, let's just get reading. It's gonna be all Jewish and fantasy and gothic. It's such a weird mix this month. I didn't get any romance. I don't think I got anything queer. Who am I? Bye.